Welcome back to the Friday show presented by Woodbine Racetrack, where this Saturday there's 5 stakes races. Starting with the third race is the Dance Smartly, a grade 2. And then you got 4 consecutive stakes races, 7 through 10, the Bold Venture, a grade 3, the Plate Trial, a big preview for the Queen's Plate in about a month. Then you've got the King Edward, a grade 2. And finally, the $500,000 Woodbine Oaks. And I've looked at the past performances. Terrific card. The Woodbine Oaks especially is a really good race. I'm Ray Pollock here with Editor-in-Chief Natalie Voss. There's a lot going on this week, Natalie. Let's start with the Saudi Cup. The officials from the Saudi Arabia Jockey Club said they're holding the first place purse won by Maximum Security as a result of the indictment of trainer Jason Servis earlier this year. And we got a response from Gary West, which said,
he obviously is not happy about that. Gary West had questions about the process that the Jockey Club of Saudi Arabia is undertaking as far as its investigation. He points out that the horse was tested before he went to Saudi Arabia for the race, tested once he got there, tested after the race, didn't find anything. He's frustrated that he doesn't know what's going on and doesn't know what basis they have for just withholding his section of the purse. They announced earlier this week that they've released the payouts to everybody else.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Saudi Arabia is just trying to get started in the international racing world, as he points out in his statement to the media, and he doesn't think they're doing things transparently.
Right. So the process, according to the rule book for the Jockey Club of Saudi Arabia, is not the same as what it is here. It's not the racing regulation is not tied up with multiple levels of state and federal government the way it is here. If you don't like the steward's ruling, you can appeal to the commission, you can appeal to the courts. That isn't really an avenue there. It is laid out pretty clearly in their rule book. You can appeal a decision of the stewards committee to the high committee, which I think is, it looks like a group of people sort of appointed by the owner of the jockey club. And that's it. So you're sort of, by agreeing to race over there, you're agreeing to abide by their rules. Their rules are a little bit more open as far as what the stewards are allowed to do in terms of ruling people off. It seems like they have a lot of ultimate discretion that stewards do not here, and there is not much of an avenue for going around that. So I can understand the frustration, but this is what everybody who ran agreed to. And this is sort of a side effect of being part of that system.
Yeah, this sounds kind of familiar, actually. You agreed to the rules when you agreed to race here. I think that was the position of the Kentucky Racing Commission when he sued over the disqualification of the same horse, Maximum Security, from the Kentucky Derby. They said that you agreed to the rules, and one of the rules is that decisions by the stewards in cases of disqualifications are final. So it's been a tough year for Gary and Mary West. To have the roses snatched away from you in the winner's circle of the Kentucky Derby because of a steward's or because of a rider's claim of foul, and then to win the first running of the world's richest race, and have not only the purse money not sent to you, but I assume they don't have the trophy either. I was trying to think of a parallel here, and the best thing I could come up with was Lance Armstrong, who won all those Tour de France titles in cycling and never failed a drug test. He was finally stripped of his titles after a thorough report from the United States Anti-Doping Agency that had evidence that he was doping throughout, and then finally he admitted to it. But he kept those Tour de France titles until the very end, when the International Cycling Federation took them away from him. This is a little bit different because the indictments came out, roughly a week or so after the Saudi Cup.
Right. And, my understanding at the time when they announced that they were going to be looking back at the results of this race is that they were going to be reliant on getting more information about the federal investigation in the United States. Well, I don't think the FBI or the Southern District of New York's attorney's office is all that interested in sharing what their surveillance tapes may have revealed beyond what's in the indictment with anybody. So I would imagine that if you're an official in Saudi Arabia, you're in this sort of awkward position of, I have concerns about this horse's integrity, but I can't get a lot more information beyond the results of the drug test. And Gary West, was pretty clear and devoted a fair bit of space, I think, in his statement to pointing out that the horse hadn't tested positive for anything. But if you read the indictment, all the substances used that are mentioned in that indictment are not supposed to test. So as far as whether or not there was actually any undue influence in the race from a substance, a test result may be the level of technicality that they should be held to for determining the outcome of the race. But if what they're concerned about is integrity, I don't know that does much to allay their concerns.
There's another thing in his statement that is a little bit curious. He said the Southern District of New York said that that Jason Servis's activities from, I think, February to December or October, I'm not sure, was the time in question, and this race was in February, so it doesn't matter. Well, as you pointed out, it's not necessarily in black and white that's the time frame that the indictment involves.
Right. I mean, I'm not sure if he is basing that on maybe the last known transcript text that appears in the indictment, or if he has some other knowledge of the case. But I don't think that anybody outside of the attorneys involved right now necessarily knows when the FBI stopped surveilling Servis or any of the other defendants. So obviously we'll eventually hear their side of the story. But for the moment, I don't know that the Saudis or anybody else can feel with certainty that there wasn't indication that some of that activity could have been going on beyond whatever the latest transcript is in the indictment, because we don't know how long they were investigating him for. And the other sort of thing about that, too, is that regardless of whether the horse tested positive, what kind of substance he was being given, if I'm a racing official looking at a result where that horse has won a race, I'm also kind of concerned about the fact that the trainer, regardless of outcome, intended, apparently, from the evidence in the indictment, to administer something that would produce an illegal edge. And from an integrity standpoint, that's kind of a concern, regardless of the time frame and regardless of the outcome as far as testing. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can, void a race result because of that. It depends on where you are and what your rules are. But I think that would be, the heart of the concern.
Back in the States, there is the issue sort of along the same lines of an Eclipse Award that Maximum Security won as a champion 3-year-old male last year. That was awarded to the Wests, and I don't know if the Eclipse Committee has ever retroactively gone back in a horse category. I think they have with an apprentice jockey one time, when they realized that an apprentice wasn't really an apprentice because he had a certain number of wins overseas. But this is an issue that may come up too, depending on, I guess, which direction the federal case against Jason Servis goes. If it goes to trial, if there's a plea bargain of some sort, is that Eclipse Award going to stand for maximum security?
It's a really good question, and it's sort of a similar hesitation. You kind of, if the allegations in the indictment are true, then you sort of hate to see a horse benefit from somebody attempting to give him an illegal edge. But I don't know that there is a legal mechanism for actual race results in this country to be reversed at this stage. I think the rules here are pretty clear that you can only do that based on drug testing results. He obviously tested clean in all of those races, so I don't see that changing. And if his record does not change, I don't know whether the Eclipse Awards committees will feel that it's appropriate for them to change the result of the vote. So it's a sticky situation, but I think we need to hear from Jason Servis, of course, as to what his side of the story is, and we need to hear more about what information the FBI was actually able to gain even beyond what's in the indictment, and presumably that will happen as the case moves forward.
Well, and the big difference between Saudi Arabia and the United States is that if the Eclipse Award Committee decided, hey, he doesn't deserve this award, we're going to take it away, then Gary West, who has been known to use the court system before for litigation, could sue them. And that wouldn't be that big of a surprise. All right, well, let's move on to Churchill Downs. Oh, and by the way, there is a poll question on our website, whether or not the Saudi Jockey Club is doing the right thing by withholding the winner's share of the purse. Be sure to let us know how you feel about that. Churchill Downs yesterday, on Wednesday rather, announced that they're going to limit attendance to 23,000, less than 23,000 for the Kentucky Derby. Earlier, they seemed to have broader plans, but total coincidence. Wednesday was also a record day for the number of coronavirus positive tests reported in the state of Kentucky. It just seems kind of incongruous that they're moving ahead with this plan when you see the Indy 500, the Masters Golf Tournament, the U.S. Open Golf and Tennis going forward with their events with no spectators.
Right. And I read through Churchill's plan that they released on Wednesday, detailing exactly how they're going to try to handle biosecurity protocols for people attending the races, having everyone spaced out, lots of signage about masking and hand washing. But really all I can think about, honestly, is standing on the outside rail waiting for the post parade for the Derby. And I'm thinking about the people standing behind me are usually not in too much of a frame of mind. The ones who are attending the race are usually not in the clearest frame of mind to be reading signs and adhering to guidelines. So it's hard to imagine that even if you limit the number of people and you say you're supposed to keep them spaced out and you hope that they'll be compliant, I don't know how compliant they're really going to be on a practical level. So it seems like this isn't maybe the best idea right now. And it could still change. If Kentucky's test results continue to be what they have been in the last couple of weeks, I wouldn't be surprised if they have to put more limits on it.
Yeah. Well, just speaking for myself, I watched the Travers Stakes, all of the races that day from Saratoga. We all know there's no spectators on site at Saratoga. Owners are permitted, which I hope will be the case for the Derby as well. But the races, the race by Tis the Law was just as great a performance as it would have been if there were 50,000 people there. Yeah, it's different, it sounds different, all that. But to me, the health of the people in Louisville, the health of the people that are traveling, going back to their homes, is far more important than either I'm not a shareholder in Churchill Downs, either for them to make money or for them to have some sort of presentation on TV with fans. We can do like baseball does with cardboard cutouts of people, along the rail. And by the way, I understand they're doing that this weekend for the Jockey Club Roundtable that's going to be virtually broadcast. They're going to have cardboard cutouts, maybe of you, Natalie, since you've been going to it every year.
I wonder if they'll have my cardboard cutout staring down at my computer screen as I usually am during the roundtable typing frantically. That would be the most realistic thing.
They're actually not doing that. I think it's a good idea, but they're not going to. Anyway, so you think that there's still some time left for, they've got to make some decisions here pretty quickly, but for the governor or someone to step in and say, this is not going to happen.
I think it's possible. I can't really think of another public event that I've been aware of that's been sort of a planned large scale thing like this that has attracted as many people as that since all of this started. I guess if you're going to have the first one in Kentucky, it's probably going to be the Derby, but it's just sort of hard to imagine, particularly as they're still discussing what to do about the start of school and whether they can have kids back in classes, to collect all those people together when people are still sort of struggling to get the infection rates down enough to return to normal. It's just hard for me to imagine. At the same time, I don't know that he's going to necessarily issue an order about that, rather than just sort of try to appeal to the leaders at Churchill to just voluntarily cut it back. But yeah, as you say, either way, they're going to have to decide before too much longer.
Yeah, and meanwhile, there's been no plans discussed publicly about the Preakness Stakes, which is a month later, or the Breeders' Cup, which will be at Keeneland in the first weekend in November. So more will be revealed on all of that, and we'll stay with it for sure. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Friday Show. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Woodbine for their support. We'll see you next week.